She's dead. The SEAL team gave up on the sniper, until her final shot saved them all. Nobody on that team believed she was still breathing. It was past 2 in the morning. The mountains of eastern Afghanistan sat black and cold under a sky with no moon. 8 Navy SEALs were crammed into a narrow ravine, pinned from 3 sides, with bullets cutting through the air so close you could feel them before you heard them. Their radios were screaming. 2 men were already down, not dead, but out of the fight. And the one person who was supposed to be watching over all of them from the high ground had gone completely silent. The team leader got on the radio and said the words out loud. 4 words, the kind that feel like a door slamming. She's dead. She's gone. And every man in that ravine believed him. Because why wouldn't they? An RPG had hit the rock shelf where she was positioned just minutes earlier. The explosion had been massive. There was no response on the radio, no movement, no shot, just silence from the one person whose job was to keep them alive. They wrote her off. They had to. There was no time to grieve. They had enemies closing in from the west, a machine gun still firing from the north, and a team that was running low on ammunition. The quick reaction force was still more than 20 minutes out. They just had to survive long enough. What none of them knew, what they could not possibly have known, was that she was still up there, on that broken shelf of rock, half buried under loose stone, one arm snapped at the elbow, blood soaking through the shoulder of her kit, and 2 cracked ribs making every single breath feel like swallowing glass. She was alive, and she was watching. She had joined the Navy at 18. Her father, a quiet man who spent his career working along the border in southern Texas, had taught her 2 things: patience and how to shoot. She was good at both from a very young age. She could stay completely still in the brush for hours without losing focus. She could put a round exactly where she wanted it, at distances that most grown men could not even see clearly. When she enlisted, she didn't tell many people. She wasn't the type to announce things. She just did them. She moved through training with the same quietness she had always carried. She never complained. She never drew attention to herself. She just kept showing up, kept putting in the work, and kept outperforming people who had never expected her to be there at all. Years later, through a program that the Navy never made public and has never officially confirmed, she was attached to a special operations element as a trained sniper in a support role, a role that on paper did not exist. 3 of the 9 men on the team formally objected when they found out. They put their objections in writing. The team leader read every one of those letters and filed them away without responding. Then he briefed her into the mission like nothing had happened. She never mentioned the letters. She probably already knew about them. She just showed up to every briefing, did her prep work, kept her gear clean, and waited. Her call sign on the radio was Vesper. The men who objected never warmed up to her quickly. One of them, a broad-shouldered petty officer who had done 6 deployments, barely spoke to her for the first 2 weeks. But he watched. All of them watched, and slowly, on smaller missions before this one, they began to understand something. She was very, very good at this. The mission that night was supposed to be clean. The team had solid intelligence on a weapons facilitator who had been moving supplies through a remote mountain province. The plan was simple: get in quietly, confirm the target, and get out before anyone knew they had been there. She would hold the high ground on a rock shelf the team had nicknamed the Shelf, watch the surrounding area, and make sure nobody surprised them on the way in or the way out. The insertion went perfectly. The objective went perfectly. By just before 2 in the morning, the team was heading back toward the extraction point, relaxed, moving well. Then the world came apart. 3 fighting positions lit up at the same time. One from the east, hidden in a tree line. One from the west, behind a low stone wall. One from directly above, on the ridge. It was a coordinated ambush, not random fighters who happened to see them, but a planned trap. Someone had known they were coming. 2 operators went down in the first 30 seconds. The rest scrambled for whatever cover they could find, which was not much. The ravine that had felt like a useful route minutes ago now felt like a trap. The men pushed against the rock walls, returning fire, trying to figure out which direction was the most dangerous. From up on the shelf, she saw all of it clearly. She identified the eastern machine gun position and took 2 shots. Both connected. The eastern fire slowed. Then the RPG came. It didn't hit her directly. If it had, this story would end here. It hit the rock face 2 meters below her position. The explosion sent stone and force upward like a wall, and it threw her backward off the shelf and into the rocks behind. She rolled. She hit hard. She lay there for a moment that felt much longer than it was, looking up at the dark sky, trying to understand what had happened to her body. Her left arm was broken. She knew immediately. The pain was sharp and total. Her ribs were badly hurt. She couldn't breathe without it cutting through her. And the side of her face felt wrong. Later she would find out her eye socket had a fracture from the blast. She could hear the radio in her ear. The team leader's voice, flat and certain. "She's dead. We've lost Overwatch." She did not correct him. She did not say a single word. Here is what you need to understand about what she did next, because it is easy to hear and easy to write off as something from a movie. It wasn't. It was a person, alone and badly hurt, making a slow and deliberate decision to do the only thing that made sense to her. She dragged herself back to where her rifle had landed. It took longer than she wanted. Her broken arm was useless. She used her legs and her one good arm and whatever core strength the cracked ribs would allow, and she pulled herself across the rock until her hand found the rifle's stock. She could hear through the radio that the western position was advancing. The team was being pushed deeper into the ravine. Without someone on the high ground, the enemy could simply walk forward and finish it. They all knew that. She knew it too. She propped the rifle across a chunk of displaced stone because her arm couldn't hold a proper shooting position. She steadied her breathing as much as broken ribs would allow. She found the point man of the western advance in her scope. Her father's voice, the same thing he had said to her since she was a child. Patience is a weapon. She waited. She breathed. She fired. 4 shots. That was all she took. The first dropped the point man at roughly 180 meters. The western advance stopped cold. Nobody moves forward when the man in front of you just goes down, and nobody heard a shot coming. The second, fired through smoke and dust, still hanging from the RPG blast, hit the vehicle-mounted weapon at the western position and disabled it. The gun jammed. Just like that, the heaviest fire they were taking went quiet. The third shot was the one that showed exactly what kind of operator she was. There was a fighter moving quietly around the far left side of the team, trying to get an angle that would have ended several lives. Not one of the men below had spotted him. He was moving slowly, using the darkness, staying low. But she had been tracking him for almost a full minute. She waited until the moment was right, and she took the shot. He went down. She had 1 round left. She never fired it. Because she didn't need to. The western fighters pulled back. The eastern position, already badly hit from her earlier work, began to disengage. In under 5 minutes, an ambush that had been set up with enough firepower to wipe out an entire element had fallen completely apart. Down in the ravine, the team leader was still pressed against the rock, trying to understand why the shooting had thinned out when his earpiece crackled with a voice he had been certain he would never hear again. Vesper to element. 3 targets down. Western position is withdrawing. I need a medevac. I have a broken arm and I am out of rounds. The quick reaction force reached them 11 minutes later. When they found her, she was still sitting upright against a rock on the shelf, rifle across her lap, still watching the tree line. She had not stopped doing her job. She was flown to a military hospital, had surgery on the eye socket, had the arm set and put in a cast, and spent 4 months in recovery. The ribs healed on their own, slowly, the way they always do. When she was cleared, she went back to duty. The official mission report was classified. It was filed under a code name that means nothing to anyone outside a small group of people. Her name does not appear in any document the public can read. The role she filled on that mission has never been confirmed to exist. But 8 men came home because of her, and they know it. The petty officer who had put his objection in writing, the one who had barely spoken to her for the first 2 weeks of the deployment, walked into her hospital room a few days after she got back. He stood there for a moment without saying anything, then he reached out and shook her good hand. No words, no apology, No explanation. She didn't ask for one. They both knew what it meant. The team leader spent years after that trying to get her recognized through official channels. He wrote nominations. He made phone calls. He sat in rooms with people who listened politely and did nothing. The formal commendation he put her name on was quietly downgraded twice before vanishing into paperwork she will never be able to read. When anyone who knew her asked about that night, she always gave the same short answer. The team made it home. That's the job. She left the Navy after 12 years. She went back to southern Texas, not far from where she learned to shoot as a child. She teaches long-range marksmanship to law enforcement now. She lives quietly. She has never spoken publicly about that night in Afghanistan. She has never confirmed any part of this story herself. There is one small detail that people who know her tend to mention, if you ask them about her. She kept the 4th round, the one she never had to fire. It sits somewhere in her house. She has never explained why she kept it, and nobody who knows her has ever pushed her to explain it. Some things don't need explaining if you're paying attention. She had 1 bullet left when the enemy walked away. The threat of it, the fact that there was still someone on that ridge still capable of firing, was part of what made them leave. That last round never touched anything, but the 3 that came before it changed everything. 9 men went into those mountains that night. 9 men came home, and the person who made that possible sat alone on a shelf of broken rock, with a shattered arm and broken ribs and a fractured face, and she quietly finished what she was there to do before she asked anyone for help. The record doesn't say her name, but the men who were there remember.